Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to yet another episode of the Gestalten podcast. My name is Eric Galina, and this is my colleague
Martin Goschwald. Hello, hello.
Hello from a snowy Munich. We are in the midst of winter, trying to stay warm inside here. Got the sweater on. But we've got a special year-end episode for Gestalten, which is basically a summary of the year. Pretty much, I think it's safe to say.
You could say it's the Konzepthaus Oscars of car design. So we sat down a little bit and we said just like, look, we should do like a review, but we didn't want to do just a normal review. So we said like, look, let's do proper awards, like our top three of 4 categories. Good and bad.
Yes.
And obviously, so this is a little bit of a special episode from us. So we're not going to talk about the cars that have just come out recently. I mean, you probably heard or saw our episode of the LA Motor Show. So we're going to, just tell you, just like listen to that again for like the latest stuff that came out. Really nothing in between was really coming up. And so we're going to have this special episode, which is the last one of 2018 as well, because, we're going to go on holiday. And we will actually have to see, quick announcement on that one, if we do one before we're actually going to be in Detroit. That depends a little bit on timing.
Yes.
But we will have another live podcast from the Detroit Motor Show in January.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, I like the motor show ones, the summaries.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, by all means, let us know if you enjoy those as well, because that's who we're doing it for. It's nice for us to go on and have a conversation, but we do that fairly regularly anyway. So I really want to let people know that they can contact us, they can drop in some comments and things. We'll take all of that feedback into account and just aim to produce more things that are in tune with what it is that you're looking for.
Exactly. There will be some new additions to the Detroit one, like, probably into a Q&A or something like that. So but more on that later. But let's get cracking.
Yeah, let's do this.
Let's get cracking and let's talk about the. We don't have a tune or something like that, which is quite sad. But let's talk about our top 3 concept cars of the year, and just to explain the principle a little bit, what we're going to do. So we're gonna have a top 3 of each of us. So we're gonna have Eric's top 3, my top 3, and then if it's possible at all, if we had the chance to get a common ground, we will have a Konzepthaus award for that specific category. And we're going to start with the concept car of the year, which starts in the 1st of January 2018 in terms of the beginning of the year, and pretty much up until today. We don't expect anything new to come in the next couple of weeks. So it's pretty much 50 weeks of reviewing that we did. And Eric, you're going to start number 3. Hit me.
Number 3 for me, I mean, it must be said that this was a difficult thing to do. Like, I mean, we're not awarding, gold, silver, and bronze medals here, but, there's been a number of concept cars unveiled this year, and there's been some good ones. And so my top 3 has got to be the Hyundai Le Fil Rouge concept, which was unveiled in Geneva earlier this year. I think it's a brilliant car. I mean, it's a sedan typology. It's a bit different. I love the surfacing. I love the kind of underlying details within that concept, and the interior to me is breathtaking. So well done to the Hyundai team globally, and particularly in Korea for kicking that one off. So I really, really do enjoy that one.
Yeah. So my number 3, quite recent actually, is the Peugeot E-Legend. I know, like, a lot of people like hyped it as like the concept car of the year, and I wouldn't go that far, but I like that producty approach to it. I love the interior. I love the materials that they were using, and I think it was definitely the star of the show. It was, a very, very good concept car, I think, for Peugeot, who have excelled, I think, over the past few years with production cars, and now came about with this concept car. So my number 3 is the Peugeot E-Legend. So we're gonna rush through 3 and 2 a little bit, but because we want to talk about number 1 quite a lot. So
that's funny that you put Peugeot E-Legend in number 3, because I thought it was in my top 3 as well, but I put it in as number 2 because I really liked what it did in terms of referencing the iconic Pininfarina design, but in a very new way, and again also kind of product design oriented. But the way that it kind of blended new technology into what is essentially a 3-box, form. So very traditional. And the interior was also very nice, and bringing it back to kind of some old world, 1970s-ish chic, in terms of the materials and certainly the colorways used. So that was my number 2, Peugeot E-Legend. All right. Do you want to move into number 1 now?
No, yeah, I have to give you the number 2.
It's too early in the morning, man.
My number 2 is something that was revealed in Pebble Beach, which is the Infinity Prototype 10. You obviously saw it in Pebble Beach. I got to see it at both the LA show as well as the Peterson Museum, where we had a really close-up shots about it. And this is just a stunning thing for me. I mean, I like those very simple surfacing. People listen to the podcast. They know that I'm always about surfacing. It needs to be simple, needs to be beautiful. And what Karim Habib has done since he joined, Infinity, going into that kind of direction, is for me fantastic. So number 2, Infinity Prototype 10. And coming to number 1, this was actually, in terms of the lists that we made, the only one where we agree on 100%, and that's what we always have behind us is the Genesis Essentia.
Yes. I mean, that was kind of unanimous. I think since we saw that car unveiled in New York, I think it's just been at the top of our list, moving since that point, because it is so good. Because it. To me, there's a number of different reasons why it made the top of that list, and I'll just go through it real quick. It's one, I think, is its purity. Yeah. Again, like you mentioned, referencing the Prototype 10, which I don't disagree with at all. But I think it's also its GT, its characteristic proportions, which are also a bit different because of the fact that it's an electric vehicle, and I like the whole thing about that car, from the packaging down to the lattice work within the doors, the whole structural, the colorways. There's so many cool things going on, so many great ideas within that one concept, and I think the team just pulled it off brilliantly, which is definitely why it made it to the top of the list for me.
Yeah, and for me, what you just mentioned with the EV is it grabs the quintessential one of a traditional car, but makes it, into a native electric vehicle. If you look into it, you wouldn't think so, but if you look into detail, if you know a little bit about the structures behind, how the weight is distributed and stuff like that, it's not just good, design in the sense of it looks beautiful, but it's just good design and actually thinking about the product, and this was, I think, in the point for me. Obviously, the E-Legend was similar. Could be, it could be made. The Prototype 10 from Infinity, not that much, but this kind of whole idea of, look, let's do a concept car that we can actually put into production. From the whole idea, and this is obviously the kind of mindset that Sasha and the whole team have over there at Genesis, is always to think about, let's not just do any kind of crap. It comes from a Volkswagen background as well, of course. Yeah, Volkswagen always does, or very rarely does show cars that are not feasible, that you could not put into production. We've seen that with the Arteon, for example, when they first shown that, there was very little changes to that. And when you come from that kind of mindset, but you get the freedom of such a fantastic kind of shape with it, it's just absolutely amazing, and I think the whole entire team, and we know a little bit about how the whole project came about, and it's absolutely fantastic, and I think very, very well deserved in their efforts as well. And of course, we're really interested in seeing if this is now really make it into production.
That would be great.
We mentioned this in the LA podcast, but we have been told it looks very positive. Nothing still official has been put out, but they said it looks very, very good. And obviously, if they can keep it very, very close to what it is in terms of the concept form, that would be absolutely fantastic.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
and it also kind of gives you a certain sense of what's happening within Genesis. Where they're going to take the brand. If this is any indication, then we will be seeing some very cool things coming out of this, Hyundai's nascent luxury brand in the very near future. So it's very, very positive. So
Yeah. And, looking ahead a little bit, obviously to 2019, because it's not just supposed to be that, one-hit wonder music style things, like you only have one great shot and then,
let's hope not,
it's
right?
gonna go away. But obviously we're both looking very, very much forward to the idea of the New York Motor Show, I think, because Genesis is traditionally the big guy at New York to reveal something. So if they come up with something similar, so far we don't know. We just have been told that there will apparently be something, but no indications of where from or like what studio from and what that is going to be. And that's going to be very, very interesting if they can continue that. Yeah, similar to Infinity, I think. We do know that Infinity, I think they've already announced it will show something in Detroit, yeah, as well as Nissan. So it's going to be interesting to see. And I think, in retrospect with Infinity, not just the prototype 10, but the Q inspiration as well, there is a clear line how they can move that forward. Yeah, and obviously that's I think for us. And, just to kind of interestingly put that out, you had technically two Hyundai cars in there in terms of the concept cars.
Yeah,
Yes, you have the Le Feu Rouge and then you had the Genesis. And it's going to be interesting to see, how they differentiate that a little bit further, because the Le Feu Rouge could also be a sedan-style Genesis. And,
easily.
So it's going to be interesting to see. But in general, this kind of output and having two of the top three cars in there for them as a group is of course, quite impressive.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think they've done some very good work. Infinity also, you mentioned, they've from the Q inspiration last year in Detroit, they've I think for the last like 3-4 years now, Infinity's made a big splash over in Detroit, and they hopefully will get into creating a lot more cars that we're going to see on the roads, imbued with this type of form language, particularly off the prototype 10, will be in production form that's pretty much all we're waiting for from Infinity is to productionize some of these concepts, whether it's the Q, which was Kareem Habib's kind of, he did have a say clearly in that, how things were done, but that was very much his first kind of foray, his first public appearance. So he followed that car pretty much from the tail end. But as we know, concept cars do get done in a fairly short amount of time. So he did have influence over that vehicle. Not as much as he would have on the production, on the prototype 10, however. So it's very interesting to see where Infinity is going. But like you mentioned also, for the last several years now, Genesis has owned New York. And they've come out every year with a new concept that just takes that city and that show by storm, which is amazing. And, good on them, because, that's a definite, on their marketing side, a definite, real coup de force, if you will, because it's really, they've just owned that show. And it's good when, companies are able to come in and say, all right, we're doing this, and the competition is just blown out of the water, and the work is very good, which is why I remember seeing that there was like a promo video for Genesis, and I don't think it was for this year, but it was maybe last year anyway, and it was kind of like Reservoir Dogs, where all the guys were walking around Manhattan. It's like very powerful. So yeah, the marketing team is also quite good over there at Genesis.
Yeah, they're always having a good laugh with everything. But all right, so we have, of course, Eric's concept car of the year is the Genesis Essentia.
Yes.
My concept car of the year is the Genesis Essentia. So we got to a consent.
We have an agreement.
We have an agreement. So what we let's call it the concept car of the year award 2018 is going to go to Genesis for the Essentia concept. That was shown at the New York Motor Show 2018. So congratulations to them.
Yes, definitely. Again, no gold medal. Sorry. We didn't get them done in time.
Yeah, you get an Instagram post probably. But yeah, let's move on. Move forward to category number 2, which is our production car of the year, 2018. And we can spoiler, I think, one little bit already, is we will not have a Konzepthaus production car of the year because we could not get on one opinion with that one.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, everybody has their own opinions, clearly, when it comes to certain things. There was one thing that we kind of did agree on, that was number 3. We
Yeah.
both kind of put the 911 in a number 3, which is, I'd love to hear your reasoning on that, because I know you're not a Porsche fanboy. But for me, number 3 for me, the 911, there was 2 cars in the number 3, and I'll probably just leave the 911 to you, actually.
Leave the 911 to me.
I'd love to hear why you like that car and you put it in number 3, because I have my reasons. But I think the BMW X2 was also kind of alongside. Now, 2 very different cars, but the 911 is the pure driver's car and very evolutionary. But then the X2 is something that is extremely hot right now, and that is the sport compact SUV segment. And other than the BMW Roundel being put in the C-Preller, which was a huge issue of contention, because you don't need to shout about a brand like BMW. I thought it was well done, proportionately. I thought it was one of the nicer current BMWs, and definitely something that buyers are looking for, so very relevant for right now.
Cool. Yeah, so I have the 911 and the 992 on there, and I had to struggle with this, to be honest. I think it got down to me to the point of where, when it comes to production car, I think, if I would have that amount of money, and then I don't really go into this kind of question of, is this is this like a limited budget or whatever? I go in, it's like, look, if I have any money, would I buy this car? Yes or no? That's how I personally judge a production car. Yeah, and I'm not a Porsche fan, but I would probably buy a 992. I do like it. It's what the 991 should be. Pretty much right from the beginning. I do have some issues with that. I've mentioned that before. Like, the detailing is not always up to me. I think, what I don't like, this is why like kind of Porsche stuck with me pretty much with the 964, potentially 993, but is they're getting wider and wider, and I think like, they don't have to get wider and wider just to make it look even more hardcore and stuff like that. But I think the 992 has found a nice little balance in that. And also the evolution that Porsche has gone through in terms of interior is just fantastic. I mean, I was sitting in the 992 at the LA show, and I really had a good look into it, and I say like this was really, really, really good. And that was something for me where I just said like, look, fantastic. Yeah, I really would put this onto my list. And I also want to say something just in terms of production costs before we get on. I think this was probably quite weak year for production cars in retrospect, because I really had, I struggled to put like a top 3 together where I confidently say like, look, those are cars that I would buy, and this was a little bit strange because I think from the concept side, like we had so many great things, but then the production side was for me personally so weak that I found this a little bit strange, from just kind of a rating perspective or like from a ranking perspective. So that's kind of how I felt about it. That's why also the Porsche came about. But it's by no means a bad car. Like, it looks good. Like I said, it's supposed to be what the 991 should have been. And that's why I put it in the number 3. But like, it's more down to the fact that I think the production year 2018 wasn't as great as maybe 2017 or 16.
Yeah, I agree. I did struggle myself to put together a list of top 3, but in the end, there were enough cars unveiled this year. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't a particularly strong year for design, I would say. But I think moving into now second place, which to me was, I think the Mazda 3 from, a production standpoint, finally when it was unveiled here in LA, was a number 2 for me, because of, where it came from and how, Mazda successfully interpreted that form language into a production car. Like, it's very easy to do crazy stuff in concept form, because they're not really looking at costs at that point. Now, when you're able to really translate that into something that's going to be mass production, mass volume, or hopefully, then, it's a lot of times, the cost cutting comes into, and, we've seen this on, on a number of occasions. I'm not going to single out any one company or product, but, they get lost. And I think there was sufficient translation from the beautiful sensuous surfacing that was on the K concept that was unveiled in Tokyo last year, and again now made its appearance in production form in the Mazda 3 in LA. And I think that vehicle, pretty much from an exterior surfacing perspective and also an interior kind of simple, really focused design, really spoke to me. So that's why it's my number 2.
Yeah. I'll stick to Japan. So my number 1, I mean, let's...
No, you're number 2. You're number 2.
My number 2, I'm sorry. Yeah, my number 2. So I think this doesn't come as a surprise, especially if you've been a long time listener of the podcast. I love the Suzuki Jimny.
Yeah.
I love that car. I just, we did a special thing like an Insta Live or whatever it was actually in the car from the Paris Motor Show because it was there. I love this little thing. It has to be number 2 for me. I know it has its flaws and people don't tell me that it's very, very badly produced. It's all made out of plastic and all this kind of crap.
It's also like 17K.
I know, this is the thing for me. It's just don't tell me about what it does bad. From a design perspective, it is incredible. Yeah. I've seen all these different kind of photoshops now with putting it into a G-Wagon body kit and stuff like that, like a high-end off-roader and these kind of things. This is what I love. This is a fun vehicle. And this is something for me is where I say, look, if it would be a bit better, it would be it would be my number 1. It's literally just came down to the fact of, a little bit of the production side. But in terms of design, it's simple, it's super great. The color schemes are fantastic. I mean, we've seen all the colors that they had. They're flashy, they're modern, they're youthful. They found a fantastic kind of pricing for it as well. I mean, it's
exactly.
21,000 euros and
that's what I was saying. It starts at 17,000, I think.
Yeah,
in
and
the UK.
then
It's
it
ridiculous.
yeah, exactly. And then the high end, literally when you have everything is I think in Germany it's 22,000.
Yeah.
So it's affordable as well.
Exactly.
And it's this kind of, for me, what Suzuki have done in that one is they've understand what the youth kind of wants. It is an SUV, it's a smaller SUV, but at the same time it's just if you're a young kid and you're looking for a car that's fun, and that is made by a Japanese company where you can always where that they're doing some stuff, man, this is the thing to go. So I have to say I was very, very close to putting it number 1.
Yeah.
But talking about number 1, Eric.
Yeah. I just want to say one thing on the Jimny though, because I think it's important to note, it's really important to always, put things in perspective, right? It's really easy when you've got massive budgets to create something that is, going to use the best materials, you're not going to spare any expense to create something nice. And sometimes people with massive budgets still don't create anything really. So I think it's quite an accomplishment for, Suzuki with the Jimny for something at such a low price point. We don't talk about pricing much on this show or otherwise, but, we try to focus mostly on design, but obviously it does have some bearing. So I think, when they're working to that really fixed price point, the budget is extremely low and they're still able to create some really innovative and cool and fun, like you say, solutions. I mean, if I had a garage, I'd definitely put that one into it.
Yeah.
The Suzuki Jimny is just a great little weekend car, little beach car, little ski car, little fun off-roading, green laning car. And even little city cruiser. I mean, we're going to see a few of those guys jumping around, I'm sure. So, yeah, good on that one.
Yeah.
But, yes, moving on.
Move to number 1. And a little bit of a precaution on that one. We have, I don't want to say we argued about this, but we had a bit of a conversation about, because we're very, very, very far away from each other in what we think our number 1 car is, but also I think in terms of our opinion on each car.
Yes. So moving on into number 1 for me. I think the Jaguar I-Pace was revealed this year, and I think that was a great production car. No, I'm not going to say it's without its faults,
Yeah.
but I think from a packaging standpoint, from a kind of volume, looking at that vehicle, I think I saw one running around in LA. I don't even know if they're on sale yet. But anyway, I went to like San Clemente Cars and Coffee. It must have been a dealer car anyway.
We've seen a few around here in Munich as well as the taxis.
Yeah,
So-
right. So I saw that thing running around, and in the California light, it definitely looked good. I mean, I remember seeing it in Geneva and thinking this is great. Now, there are a few things, I think in terms of space within the cabin, it could have been bigger. It could have been better utilized, in terms of, their whole like skateboard architecture and so forth. But I think in terms of blending an SUV, because that's what it's called, mainly to get past like emissions requirements, of course. If you classify that car as, an SUV, then, it's just better overall for the company, right? Because then their targets are, anyway, it means a lot to classify that car as an SUV when in fact it is a typical crossover. Because I mean, when you look at it, it sits low, much lower than the traditional SUV. It's just the fact that its form is more, it's your typical crossover, your modern day wagon. Now, I love the use of, the glazing and how it goes way above your head, gives you like a lot of sense of space from the driver's seat. I like the layouts, like the layout. It's very ergonomic sitting in that cabin. Now, I haven't driven the car, unfortunately. I hear it's great. I hear it's fantastic off-road, and it's got performance credentials and all the rest. I think overall, though, in terms of like showcasing a volume car maker, showcasing what, their vision for the future is in terms of electrified mobility, I thought it was quite good. I thought it was well done. So that's why it's in my number one.
Cool. I'm not gonna. I'll just accept that.
You're not gonna agree.
No, I'm not gonna agree on that one. But just a little bit of an anecdote. I think that just to give the listeners and like the viewers a little bit of an idea. So, we were actually at the Jag stand in LA, and we had a few minutes to spare. So we sat down in the car together, and I was just like, this is. On the first sight, it looks nice, but then there comes like what obviously like the designers call perceived quality. Now it's just like, man, this is crap. It was literally, I had the feeling this whole thing is gonna fall apart very, very soon. And obviously, like Jag, let's give Jag some credit. They have improved their quality quite significantly over the years. But if I compare that one to an i3, for example, it just stinks. And this is the thing for me. This is why I, in terms of the design, I'm not majorly a fan of Jag design. I think they're just trying too hard to push for like, this kind of BMW one. Or like, the kind of BMW volumes and like, make sure that everything looks kind of the same. So I'm not really a fan of like where they're going. That's why like, this is a different kind of story for me in terms of design. But in terms of the quality, I mean, we had this salesperson coming over and trying to tell me how great it was. And then we were just like, I think, was it like, where we found some kind of, I think it was in the front where the battery was, and there was this little compartment.
Yeah.
And we were just like, why?
Yeah, no, it is like, it's a shame. I mean, obviously, the layouts and how they've decided to put things in certain places means that the frunk, the front trunk is
Tiny.
pretty much the size of a briefcase.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I would honestly, if you didn't need to access that for any other reason than for that little briefcase compartment, you might as well just save the componentry on the hinges for that front like opening, because you don't need it. Like, it's totally unnecessary. So I think they could have been, they could have made more concessions and more like for space, in particular. I don't think it's utilizing the package to its full potential.
And just as, not really to take any credit away from Jag, because I think what is special about this car, and this is why I can understand you put this number one, it really splits the people. Either they absolutely love it. It has received, a bunch of, Car of the Year awards already, like, Design of the Year awards. And then there's the other side of the people, like, it's pretty much exactly like us at the moment. Like you say, look, this is fantastic. I say, look, I think it's crap. And it's exactly split in that kind of way at the moment. There is not really anything in between. And that's why I to a certain degree, I would agree, of course, yeah, because there's so many people liking that thing. But this is also, I think, why this year was so difficult for us to find a consensus number one, is because a lot of these cars do split, yeah, and
it divides opinion. I mean, thing is, I'm not going to say it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Like I said, it does have its faults, but I think in terms of vehicle typology, in terms of what it means about our current time in 2018 and electric vehicles and moving, we haven't seen anything production ready from any other major manufacturer.
Exactly.
So that to me, in terms of future thinking, I think it's a good step for Jaguar.
Yeah.
Hats off to them.
Yeah. So you talked about pricing earlier, and I want to quote you on this one, and just let our listeners be part of that. When I told you what my car of the year was in terms of production, you just said like, why? Nobody can afford this kind of thing. It's way too expensive. It's not made for the people. And
I'm all for the people.
And I do very much appreciate that. But it really got down to the point is my ranking system is if anybody would have, an unlimited amount of money, would I buy this car? And this is in the end, from a design perspective, of course. And so the Ferrari Monza SP1 and SP2, so I've put them all in there because they're in principle very similar, pretty much the same, has won it for me this year. I mean, I remember we saw it in Paris. We got a nice little personal tour from Flavio Manzoni about it as well. And it's just fantastic. I mean, again, it comes down to, for me, to the surfacing, the simplicity of everything. It's that's why it was so difficult for me to choose between the Ferrari and the Jimny, was because they're both simple and beautiful in their own way, and I think the Ferrari just has a slight edge, because for me that kind of comes back into the older Ferrari style. It kind of picks on the history of Ferrari, the beauty of Ferrari, what it used to be, where now it has become a little bit more edgy from time to time. And I think this was the kind of reincarnation for me of this beautiful, really absolutely beautiful, and probably one of the best Ferraris in the last 5-10 years. That came down, and obviously it is very limited. I think it's 499 cars. And they said, depends on the orders, and then we decide which one we're going to make, so SP1 or SP2. But it really got to the point where I'm saying, it's like, look, I absolutely love this thing. If I would have the 1.6 million or whatever it costs, I would buy it, because it just got down to the fact of just its sheer beauty. And so it's I'm going from 20 grand to 1.6 million.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, obviously the Ferrari is very good, but like I said earlier, with seemingly unlimited budgets, you're able to create some really cool stuff. So
exactly.
With that in mind, obviously the exterior, the surfacing, the body of that vehicle is sublime, as are the materials and, the fact that they were able to explore so many things. Now, there's a reason for me not to pick that in, car. One, because it costs 1.6 million, and who the hell can afford that? And two, because of the fact that it's very limited production. Yeah. So, for me, I wanted to pick vehicles that were, available to the people in greater volume.
Power to the people.
Yeah, power to the people.
Power to the people.
And I mean, this year we have to do a little side note here, a little ding, a little asterisk. Because this year has really been the year for me, I think more so than any other, of limited series vehicles. We've talked about this on numerous podcasts in the past. It just keeps going. It's like, a tumbleweed that's just accumulating, getting bigger and bigger over time. And it's going to continue to be that way, because we're going to see a disparity continue between the Renault Clios and the Suzuki Jimnys of the world versus the, one-off bespoke, Rolls Royce, whatever the hell that thing was called.
What's it called? The Sweptail.
Sweptail. Thank you. And so it's interesting the way that the industry is going now. In terms of electric propulsion, autonomy, all of those big, massive, trendy things. that are taking place, and it's really creating a divide within what these large volume car makers are able to produce, and then what these niche and supercar and manufacturers like Ferrari, for example, are putting out to cater to those really discerning high net worth individuals.
Yeah, yeah,
Interesting
very true.
times.
Very true. Very true.
Interesting
But
times.
as mentioned, we have not been able to find a consensus number one.
No.
So unfortunately, there is no concept car.
No,
Production car
Production car.
Of the year for us in
No.
that sense. But in that kind of case, let us know what you think.
Yeah, exactly. What do
Because
you
that
think?
is tell us what you think is production car number year, and if we have, I don't know, 100 people saying this is number one for us, maybe we jump on that.
Yeah, you know what? I think, maybe it's a good idea, just cast your votes. I mean, I'm sure there's a way for you to do that. We'll figure out a way.
I know what we can do. Okay, so we'll do the following, yeah? Check our Instagram in the next few days from when this is recorded. We will have a story post or something like that on there, or just a normal kind of post, and we'll ask you to comment on the production car of the year, because we couldn't find ours as a whole.
Yeah, quite. That's a good way of getting your ideas over to us. And you can, just shoot a quick line and let us know what your concept car of the year was. And if you
And
feel...
the production as well. And the production as well.
Production as well is really what we're looking for. Production car of the year was. But also a little summary as to why, if you do want to add that. Because it's always interesting to know, why people choose what they choose.
Good. All right. So we have 2 out of 3 big categories.
Yeah.
And we will have also, just to kind of spoil that a little bit, we will have a raspberry.
Yes.
The bad Oscars.
The fails of 2018.
We will do that as well, but that's going to be the fun part towards the end. But our last big category in terms of awards will be the design team of the year. And just to kind of explain what we mean by that, it's not what the design teams have been actually doing in their studios this year. That would be very, very difficult for us to judge. But what we mean is what the kind of results of the design teams have come out this year on a constant level. I think this is what we're going to judge them on. We're not going to judge them on just one fantastic car and the rest was crap, pretty much. What we're going to do is we can see some consistency. We see a development, for example, where we then say look, this is going into the right direction, and that's how we're gonna rank them. Yeah. So design team of the year, top 3, Eric, number 3.
Number 3, I kind of went back and forth on this one. Ultimately, I think I chose Genesis, mainly because of what it is that we've seen unveiled in the last year. And having spent a bit of time with the people that are behind the scenes, like Sasha Selepanov, for example, and Luc Donkervolk, and the team over at Genesis, particularly the European studio, like that. I know those guys. I mean, I know some of the guys over there in the US as well, but I really do like the direction that they're going in, and I think that it is predominantly led by design. They're really initiating everything and guiding that brand into what it is that it will eventually become and has become. So that's why I tip my hat to those guys at Genesis.
Cool. So my number 3, we have mentioned them before with the Prototype 10, is the Infinity design team. And mainly for the reason, and I have a little bit of an asterisk on that one, because we haven't seen really new production cars from them. But the direction that we have seen now with Karim Habib coming in, him kind of interpreting Japanese culture and mixing it with his kind of global background. I mean, that guy has been everywhere in the world, and it's really, really interesting to see that. Q Inspiration was the first one, and obviously the Prototype 10 came about. Even looking back at the Prototype 9, where he wasn't involved, but it is a very, very clear kind of statement where they're going to. And I am very, very much looking forward to what they're now going to show in Detroit, and also, of course, where they're going to from a production perspective. That's why there's a little asterisk in there, but you can clearly see there's a constant level of a very, very good quality on all different kinds of levels. And of course, you see there's a willingness to change things. I mean, Infinity always had good concept cars, but then they never really put it out into a production level. Now they have fantastic concept cars, so obviously the bar is quite high. And that's why for me I've put them on with a little bit of an asterisk, but in terms of like the output that they've had so far was fantastic.
No, I definitely. I mean, I agree with you. I put Infinity in number 2 because I thought that in terms of what it is that they've been doing, and particularly since the arrival of Kareem Habib, but also since Alfonso Albeza has been at the top, since that transition, over. I always liked Nakamura. I always really, got on with him famously. I thought he was a brilliant guy in charge of Nissan Infinity overall. But it seems like, there's a lot more kind of movement going on now that Alfonso's in place. And yeah, I mean, for the exact reason that you outlined, I think earlier, it's like, I think they've found their niche, and Alfonso in particular really strives on that Japanese. This is a guy that's also very international, and one of the very few non-Japanese, executives at a Japanese company. So that was, I think, a huge accomplishment for him. But he's able to really take into account what Japanese values are, and then convey that into vehicles.
Yeah,
and he's done that quite successfully, and now with Kareem as well, in terms of bringing those values into the product range at Infinity. And again, like you mentioned, it's a shame that we haven't yet, because this has been going on for years, right? We've yet to see a real manifestation of those values into a production vehicle. Now, we were a bit disappointed in Paris when we saw that kind of,
the Project Black.
Yeah, very like the Project Black-esque, like, just kind of in a little corner over there, like not
Which
really.
was cool as well. I mean, it was, the way they did it was actually very, very interesting.
Oh no, I thought the car itself was great. I just thought the presentation
that was crap.
was fucking horrible.
It was terrible.
It's a shame because, they just could have done a much better job in terms of doing that, so I think Nissan as a whole, unfortunately, from a marketing perspective, is nowhere. It doesn't have, can't hold a candle to, Genesis, for example. I think they've done so many cool things. When you think about the history of the company, I mean, you go back to Infinity with the FX, that was like a car that pretty much invented the coupe crossover SUV typology. And no one really knows about that because, Nissan didn't do a good job marketing that vehicle. So it's a real shame. Anyway, I think from a design team perspective, maybe there should be a bit more, together with discussion together with the marketing team in terms of really bringing, design to the fore as other companies have, and really aligning themselves together to talk more about what it is that's happening. But I think, Infinity, a clear second for me, and for reasons that we've seen the concept car, and for hopefully what it means for the future.
So my number 2, and I know we've talked about those guys a lot, and they have received so much praise over the past few years, is Volvo. And the reason being for that is actually not necessarily just because of the design quality that they've kind of released over not just this year but also last year, of course. So it's the kind of the continuity is they're so good in terms of what they're doing at the moment, and you could very, very much argue, is it the best design team in the world at the moment? But for me, what this really made it very, very clear, and where I'm just saying I need to put them into my top 2, top 3 in total, is their courage. Because I was blown away by the fact that, in the first press day, there were no cars. they understand that design can also communicate in a different way. That it's not just about the car itself. That design is so much more, and obviously something very Scandinavian in general to do that. It's again the kind of simplicity. We don't need to show you always the product. We can tell you about it, and you know exactly what it looks like. But it's also things such as the 360C, which I first of all was quite critical. Then I had a little bit of a demo in LA of it, and I was just like, wow, this is actually just intellectually it's just fantastic. And I think in terms of where Volvo is going into this kind of premium sector, Scandinavian style, like a very simple kind of style, but still high quality and everything. This is the most interesting one for me. It's not the XC60 is fantastic car, XC40, XC90. Pretty much almost all the stuff that they've released this year has been really, really good. But it's just this kind of, forward-thinking way in terms of a design, and not just in terms of just a car. I mean, we know that in Volvo, like even the stand design for the shows is part of the design department. Yeah. So thinking really further ahead with those kind of things is something that I do really appreciate that. And so that's why for me, the Volvo team is number two, and not just necessarily for like the cars. I think just for the overall understanding of the design and of the transportation design or mobility design nowadays. That's for me to sum it up from that side.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with you, and which is why I put Volvo as my number one. I think in terms of what we've seen this year, not only the vehicles that have been, produced and launched this year. I mean, also, Volvo and then now Polestar. Polestar and Volvo kind of still integral, still kind of the same team. I agree with you in terms of what it is that they're doing in terms of putting design out there. I think again it is it's design led certainly, but it's very marketing focused as well. So for example, the LA show stand, something that's very fresh in our minds because it only happened a few weeks ago. Not having cars on the show stand definitely got the press talking. Yeah. Got the company in maybe newspapers or websites that they normally wouldn't have, and column inches is gold. So any time that anyone is talking about a company, it's brilliant. Now obviously they didn't carry that on because second press day there were vehicles all over the place, and that's great. But at the same time they did have, as you mentioned, that VR experience for the 360, where you were able to fully immerse yourself in a kind of seating book and experience the concept, which isn't actually real. I think it's just only virtual.
They did. I think they did one show car buck.
Was there a real car?
I think there was one real car, but just an exterior. I think was just an inside out model. But,
okay.
But yeah,
I thought it wasn't purely digital anyway. But it's still an interesting idea, for the future of Volvo and where they're going. But yeah, I mean, I think in terms of what we've seen, not only from the product, the accomplishment pretty much in such a short span of time, it must be said, moving that company into, competing with the likes of Mercedes and BMW at the same level, at the same price point, would have been unheard of several years back. And now, you're like, I quite like Volvos, and you go and look at them and they're bloody expensive, So they've definitely attained that premium level, and they've done that through design and, for the last 2 years, but we didn't have one of these awards last year. So, I think definitely for me, again, I don't know what the hell's going on behind closed doors. It might be a bloody mess, but it doesn't look that way because they're coming out with some really cool stuff for the entire kind of brand. Yeah. And so that aura is definitely, top number one for me. Yeah.
So my number one might be a bit of a surprise for a number of people, but I've picked the Skoda design team as number one because I think what they have done and what they have released this year in terms of quality, in terms of development, evolution, not revolution, has been outstanding. And I think for me, the Skoda design team is at the moment by far the best Volkswagen design team, followed by the Seat design team. I don't think any other of them can really get anywhere close at this moment in time. And it's, yeah, I don't know. It's like every time I see a new concept car, like, it makes sense for them to do that. It makes sense to show something like that. It's not overly crazy, of course, yeah. So you can judge them like, oh, do like a proper, Gran Turismo car or something like that. I don't know. Like, I don't mind that much. But it's just good, and obviously they have success. I mean, they're the most, I think like they're now the second or like even the most successful brand within Volkswagen in terms of sales numbers and everything. So they're clearly doing something right, but they're jumping also into the right niches. They've just released the Scala, and if you see that, that's just bloody good. That's just the way it is. And that's the reason for me why for me personally Skoda 2018 is number one. And but we do have a consensus number one. So the Konzepthaus Design Team of the Year 2018 award goes to the Volvo Design Team up in Gothenburg. So congratulations to Thomas Englad, Robin Page, Tisha Johnson, and everybody else in that
Max,
team.
all
Max,
those people,
of course, yeah.
Obviously those are the guys at the very top.
Yeah.
But this is an award for the team, so everyone that is, within there. We don't have enough time to go through all that.
Exactly.
We don't know everybody in that team. But I think that as a whole, the consensus is the Volvo team is winning. And, hats off to Skoda as well, because, I do really, really enjoy how people in companies tend to harness certain elements that are specific to their regions. So Skoda's doing that, and Mazda's doing that, Infinity's doing that. So I think, even though there isn't perhaps a J factor, that's a subject for another podcast, I think there's still certain things to be said for a brand that can bring in certain elements of, where they're coming from and convey that into the product. But anyway, Volvo is number one for our design team. Now, we're going to move into...
Oh, the fun session. Can we now just go a little bit mental?
Session.
So we have the raspberry of Konzepthaus 2018, or as we call it, the fails.
Yes.
Of 2018, and we're gonna have the same category. So we're only gonna talk about one thing. So not like a top three, but literally just like let's not call it the worst of the worst, but like what we thought was like the kind of disappointment.
A disappointment, exactly.
Yeah. So
exactly.
Concept car of the year, Eric, hit me.
Concept car of the year, I would say the Icona Nucleus thing. Now, I really like Samuel...
Just to say that.
Yeah.
Worst concept car of the year.
What did I say?
We just said concept car of the year. We don't want to be quoted in the wrong way. Just say
right.
like, it's the best car of the year.
Yeah, no, I don't. The thing is, I'm gonna do a little asterisk here myself, because I generally love cars. I love anything. If I'm in Italy and I'm driving a 20-year-old Fiat Panda, I'm stoked.
Yeah.
I love all types of vehicles. Now, this is very specific to, in my mind, how I'm judging this in terms of, a disappointment is it really, is there a future for this? Like, how does it represent our current kind of paradigm, and what issues does it resolve? So that's really like how I'm judging this. How I'm going about this. So for me, that Icona Nucleus thing is, I like Samuel Schufar and his team. They're in, I think they're in the States, definitely in LA, and also in China. Anyway, the point is, that thing is the size of my house.
Yeah.
Now, I don't really, even if we're looking at, the future of luxury, and like everybody's going to be in these like beautiful, like, pods of like luxury, I fail to see how something like that is going to be, able to be used in a city like, Munich or Paris or London. It's like, I just don't, I don't get it. So from a design perspective, it's a fail for me.
Cool. So my fail of the year in terms of a concept car is going to Renault. And it's the Easy Ultimo, which mainly for me has to do with the quality of other concept cars, like of the quality that we're used to from Renault at the moment. And I'm a big fan of the Easy Pro. I think that concept is absolutely incredible. Yeah, like, I was in love with the thing when they had the barista bar and all these things at the Paris Motor Show. Incredible. But the Easy Ultimo was just, for me, something that seemed a little bit just like, oh shit, we have to do something for the Paris Motor Show. It's 120 years of Renault. You know, it's like, oh, let's do something luxury. Like it's too big, it's overstyled, it's kind of, you know, oh, let's put some parametric modeling in there and stuff like that. So it's just too forced for me. And compared to what we've seen, like, you know, especially with the Trésor or something like that, where you really clearly saw that there were, you know, time and thinking in there, like really, really good stuff. I would really say the Easy Ultimo, unfortunately, was for me the thumbs down of 2018.
And I think that's it's similar to, you know, the Ultimo and the Icona nucleus thing is, I think the reason why those cars let us down is, you know, I think certain details on the Ultimo were nice, but ultimately, it's just, how do people, you know, when you think about design, you've got to think about it not only from an aesthetic perspective, like does it look good, but how are people going, you know, like the Ultimo is super low, you know, in terms of like ingress egress. It's like, are you serious?
Lawrence Vandenacker pretty much couldn't get in there. Like, you know, he had to fall into the whole thing. I remember when we were standing there and he was going in. So,
I just don't think either of those vehicles is an accurate depiction of what we're going to be doing in the near future in terms of luxury. And so I think they missed the mark, and I think we can agree on that bit.
So,
moving into now, what would you want to do?
Bad production car of the year.
Bad production car. All right. Well, production car. There's been see, the thing is, again, I love to drive, and I know that this car is going to be fun to drive, but it's a bit of a shame for me because, you know, I debated this a bit. BMW, generally, I own one. They're fun to drive. They're great fun to drive cars. But I debated this between the 3 Series and the BMW Z4, and ultimately the Z or Z, whatever you want to call it, 4 is unfortunately a big disappointment for me. And the major disappointment for me is in its proportions. I think the interior is fine. I can live with that. It's fine. It's good. 3 Series, you know, similarly, it's like I just don't think it's progressive enough. But, you know, I can live with it. Where I'm kind of, you know, it just seems like every Z car that's been revealed since the Z3 has just kind of let me down a little bit more over, you know, progressively. So, like, the last Z4 was, all right, you know, it was okay. I mean, it was definitely better than the Z3. But then, I don't know why they're calling this new one the Z4, because it should be a Z5, I guess, right? It's definitely a very, you know, a huge step change in terms of, you know, what the 4 was, the last 4. But again, what really lets me down, I think, and I can't get that image out of my head, is the front overhang on that vehicle. I haven't been behind the wheel. I have no idea what it's like. But when you look at it, the overhangs on that car, I just don't understand. Maybe they were, you know, saddled with the wrong platform. Maybe they tried to, you know, I have no idea what the deal was. Yeah. But I just don't like it.
And especially like just because we know the Supra is coming very, very soon. And from all what we hear is the Supra is much better than the Z4, which is the same platform. So then we have something to really compare with. But like I do agree, it's not my favorite car of the year. But for me, the thumbs down of 2018, and this is very emotional to me, I have to say that. Yeah, so this is a fully you know, emotional kind of point, is the Aston Martin DBS. I'm so sad. I'm so angry with that car. I just call it the whale because it has the front is just like, you know, I'm just gonna eat you like a whale shark. I just think I like the DB11. I don't like the new Vantage. Yeah, like, you know, please make a proper front out of this. Like, don't have the graphic in there. You know, like what the hell is that? And the DBS is just a continuation of that. It's just terrible. I know there's, again, a bunch of people that like it. For me, it goes away from what Aston Martin is supposed to be like. You know, they have this kind of, oh, it's supposed to be beautiful marketing thing. No, the DBS is not beautiful. You know, the DBS wants to eat you, and I don't want to have a car that wants to eat you. So that's really the point for me, is what I'm saying. Just like, no, thank you very much. That's probably my worst of 2018. But to finish this all off, we have a consensus I know this sounds really mean when we say that, but worst design team of the year, or like most disappointing design team of the year, probably hits it better. I don't want to say worst because they can do some good stuff if we've seen before, but
Yes.
the biggest disappointment of a design team is BMW.
Yeah, at the moment it is a real shame. The everything that we've seen unveiled by BMW this year has not been, universally well received. Certainly not by myself. I just don't. Yeah, I just don't see where they're going, and I don't like where they're going. What I see, in terms of their products, it's like they've lost a lot of the brand identity. They've gone to certain things where you're kind of questioning who's made these decisions and why they were made and why they were indeed pushed through into production, because it's a shame. It's definitely, I think BMW this year just kind of fell off the mantle.
Yeah, and what we can say, just to kind of finish this off, I can easily see BMW being on the 2019 awards, on where we say like this was the best design team of the year, because we have not seen anything from Josef Kaban yet. We just haven't. Like, there was nothing out there where he was involved. They've pushed the eye stuff and everything, which was all run by Domagoj Dukic. I want to see what BMW is going to be under Kaban. That's what I'm really interested in. And so this is for me the disappointment. Like, so far, what they've shown this year, not great, but I can see that there's the potential to go upwards. I think this is also what made the kind of decision for us quite easy. It's like, we can see that it's going upwards, but this is probably like the most disappointing one from that perspective. But so yeah, I would, obviously not congratulations to BMW, but like, a little bit of a spur for you guys to hopefully show us something very, very soon that comes out that is a little bit better. From that perspective. And yeah, so to sum up 2018, I think we had in general a good year. Yeah. I want to thank pretty much everybody who supported us, who listened to us, who watched us, who came to meet us at all the different shows, who sent us messages, who encouraged us to do, to continue the podcast and stuff like that. We do really, really appreciate all the support. I think we've done in total 15 episodes this year, 15, which has been a hell of a ride. I think we, when we started this out, it was something for us like, I don't know, let's see how it goes, and we will definitely continue that. So thank you to everybody, to who supported us. Also, obviously, thanks for Eric for always taking the time. Yeah,
cheers, man. Thank you.
To do that. I also want to thank our producer Eddie, who has been patiently helping us on all those kind of things, setting up the cameras, the lights, having, I don't know, everything, like, the microphones, like, you can hear us because of him. Like, we are absolutely illiterate when it comes to those kind of technical things. So, without him, we couldn't have done it. And also, of course, all the other guys, in the Konzepthaus team, in the back office, and, from, the other recruiters that are working here, because, everything that we talk about pretty much comes from the conversations that we all have together. So even though they're not in this podcast, small parts and bits and pieces of their opinion are in this as well. It's because we talk about that. So we should never forget that. And of course, a little bit of encouragement for next year. Give us the feedback if you want to. I mean, we've had some fantastic feedback already. If you have questions, send us emails. If you want to apply for positions that we have available, always check our Instagram, check our LinkedIn. We will post the latest stuff on there as well. Don't hesitate to contact us. We literally have absolutely no shame in sending your messages back. We're nice guys. Don't worry about that. And so from that side, and I think from the both of us, a big thank you for an absolutely fantastic 2018. We're looking forward to already Detroit, and then this, we can't really, we're already planning for Geneva already as well. So things are moving very, very quickly. And thanks for everything. Thanks, Eric, again for a fantastic year, and
good stuff, man.
And you will hear again from us in 2019.
Yes, quite.
Yeah.
So happy holidays, guys.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
See you in the new year.
See you in 2019.